Hello and welcome to the class. My name's Paddy. Today we're going to be looking at part 3 of the IELTS listening test. If you have any questions after you watch this class, remember that you can click on the chat icon at the top of your screen here. Click on that icon to send us a message with any questions that you have. This is the second class of 2 classes, and this video will last just over 20 minutes. First, we're going to talk about part 3 of the listening test. Then we're going to look at how to label flowchart questions, and we're going to look at multiple choice questions. So by the end of this video, you will be more aware of how to do this part of the listening test. During this video, there will be some questions for you to answer. You can find these below the video. I will tell you when you need to answer them, and I will give you about 10 to 15 seconds to do so. Okay, let's get started. So what can you expect in part 3 of the listening test? Part 3 always features a conversation. It could be a conversation between 2 people, 3 people, or maybe a group of 4 people. So you need to be good at hearing different voices and understanding what each separate speaker is saying. The context of this part is usually academic or related to training and education. So common situations include a group of students discussing working on a project together, maybe at school or at university. It could be some university students talking about a project or their academic work with their teacher, or it might be an employee or employees talking about a training course that they're doing or will be doing with their manager. So if you want to prepare for this part, it's a good idea to study language related to students, university life, and training and education in general. There is a wide variety of question types, but it's quite common to see multiple choice questions or questions where you have to match the speaker to what their opinion is or what they're saying. So matching information questions. As we said before, in part 3, you will be listening to more than one speaker. So it's important to recognize those different voices and what they're saying. Sometimes the question can give you a clue as to who to listen to. Let's look at this question. In this question, we need to match the speaker to their opinion. So just looking at the question, how many speakers do you think we're going to listen to? Look at the first question below this video and choose the correct number of speakers we will hear in this question. There will be 3 speakers in this question. We can get this from A, B, and C. So those are the 3 people. We have Rose, Gerard, and the professor. Of these 3 people, which voice do you think will sound the oldest? Look at the next question below this video and choose A, B, or C. Which person will probably sound the oldest of the 3? So it seems quite likely that the professor will sound the oldest. Of course, you can have students who are older than their professors. This is possible, but it's very likely that the professor will be a little bit older. So this is all information that we can use to predict before we hear. Now, let's think about men and women, male and female. Which of these people, A, B, or C, is definitely female? Rose, Gerard, or the professor? Look at the next question below this video and choose the correct option for who is definitely female. Person A, Rose, is definitely female. If you're familiar with names in the English language world, you'll know that Rose is a girl's name. Gerard is a man's name, so we can be confident that Gerard will definitely be a man's voice. The professor, of course, could be either. We have no idea what gender the professor will be. Now I'd like to look at another type of question you might find in part 3 of the listening. This is a flowchart. So a flowchart is a diagram that shows the steps or stages in a process. It doesn't use images, however, it uses text. We need to complete the notes in this flowchart with some words. The instructions for this question tell us write no more than 2 words for each answer. So we could write 1 word or 2 words in each gap. We're going to listen to a conversation between a student and a professor about their plans for an outdoor experiment. Look at the flowchart and think about this information. In the conversation between a student and a professor, who do you think is going to be telling us information that we need to hear for this question? Look at the next question below the video and choose either professor or student for who will give us the most information for this question. So I think the professor is going to give us most of the information for these questions. This flowchart shows the process of how to carry out an experiment, so it's probably going to be the professor explaining that to the student. Now we have 20 to 30 seconds before we listen to the recording to read the question, underline some keywords and predict our answers. So let's do that now. Let's underline some keywords to start with. For question 24, we have choose the date and something for the study. So the word date there is going to be important because it's together with our answer. 25, we need to get permission from, and then the answer will be who or what we get permission from. In 26, well, the word experiment is the whole flowchart, so maybe similar conditions is what we need to listen for. So a synonym or related word to similar conditions will be in the listening there. Now we can start to predict our answers. As we said before, for question 24, we've got the word and, so date and something. That means we can expect our answer to come together with the word date or with a synonym of the word date there. 25, get permission from. According to this sentence, what kind of answer would you expect 25 to be? Look at the next question below this video. There are 4 options for what kind of answer 25 could be. Is it a location, a person, an activity, or an emotion? Choose the correct option. Question 25 will probably be a person. It could be the name of a person, it could be the name of a job, so the supervisor, for example, or it could be maybe a collection of people, like a department, so get permission from the experiment department, something like that. Now, this is a flowchart, and the questions always go in order of the numbers. So after 24, we're going to hear the information for 25. Then we have something about carrying out the experiment safely. The flowchart then splits into 2. This means we can't be exactly sure which will come first, but it's very likely that they will speak about the left part first and that 26 will be last. But we can't be 100% sure about this. Let's look at 26 and see if we can predict something about the answer. Remember, this is not a complete sentence, but it must still have some meaning. So in the space for 26, what word class would you expect in this space? Look at the next question below this video and decide what is the word class for this answer. So that's, is it a noun, is it a verb, or is it an adjective? The answer to question 26 will definitely be a verb. Look at the other boxes. Choose, get, carry, write. They all start with verbs, so we can be pretty confident 26 is going to start with a verb. What kind of verb could this be? What verb can we use with experiment? Well, there's do an experiment, carry out an experiment, in similar conditions, maybe repeat an experiment. So already we can be pretty confident about the kind of answer to expect here. As we said before, 24 is going to be something you get with date. Maybe something like date and time would be logical. 25, as we said before, is going to be some kind of person or maybe a department. Keep those predictions in mind. We're going to listen. Look at the next 3 questions below this video. They ask for the answer to 24, 25, and 26. You will need to write your answer in the box. Remember, no more than 2 words. I'm going to play the recording and we will check the answers after.
There are just a few things I wanted to check with you about the upcoming experiment, Professor.
Of course, Joe. What is it you wanted to know?
Well, I'm not entirely sure about how to carry out the experiment and how much time I'll need.
Ah, okay. Right. The first step is to decide exactly when and where you're going to carry out the study. You'll need to specify the exact location where you plan to set up, and then pick a day that suits everyone on your team.
All right, I'll check with the other students and see what they think.
Great. Once you've made all those decisions, you'll need to submit your plan to the department supervisor for approval. It's her job to determine if the study can be done according to university guidelines.
How far in advance do I need to submit it?
Oh, as long as you do it the day before, it should be fine. And once you've done all that, you're free to conduct your experiment, making sure that you follow the health and safety guidelines, of course. We don't want any accidents.
No, well, I can't imagine we'll be doing anything dangerous.
Now, there is a chance that you may have to redo the experiment, as often happens when insufficient data is gathered. If this is the case, make sure you choose another day with conditions that match your first experiment. But when you have enough data, it's time to return to the laboratory and write up your results in a report.
Well done if you got at least one of those correct. This is just a practice, so don't worry if you made a few mistakes. 24 was location, so choose a date and location for the study. Now you can see that it would be a logical prediction to guess something like location here. 25 was department supervisor. If you wrote the department supervisor, you would get 0 because that is 3 words. Remember, these are notes, so you don't need to use perfect grammar. Department supervisor. Supervisor would not be enough because there are different types of supervisor, so we need the word department there. And finally, 26 was redo. If you won't repeat, that's a very logical answer and it has a similar meaning here, but the correct answer was what they said in the listening, which was redo. So redo the experiment in similar conditions. Well done. Finally, I'd like to look at multiple choice questions, another common type that you see in part 3. Here, we see a multiple choice question that's a little bit different to the one we saw in class 1. In this question, we have to choose 2 options. So you will also see this type of question. The context of the conversation here is the same as before. We have a student talking to a professor about their project. Have a look at this question and think again about which speaker is going to give us the useful information. This time, will it be the student or the professor telling us most of what we want to know? Look at the next question below this video and decide which speaker is going to give us most of our useful information, the professor or the student. So for this question, we're probably going to be listening to the student, because the question asks us, which two issues does Jo think are affecting her group? So probably a student would have a group of other students. We see that the student is called Jo, and we see the pronoun her. This tells us we're going to be listening for a girl or woman's voice. Remember, we need to select 2 options of these 5. Sometimes you will need to select 3 correct answers from 6 options. First of all, as usual, let's go through the options and focus on the keywords. So which 2 issues does Jo think are affecting her group? So issue is going to be a problem, and affecting, it must actually have an impact on her group. We also have Jo think, so it must be her opinion. A, workload from other courses. So workload and other courses here. It can't be this course, it must be other courses of the university, and workload means the amount of work that they have. B, the amount of time until the deadline. So that's the period of time before they must hand in their project. C, the date of the experiment. So maybe there's a problem with the actual day that it's being done. D, a lack of leadership, not enough leadership. And E, no one listens to her. So that's all important. None of the group listen to Jo, and she thinks it's a problem, if that's the correct answer. We're going to listen to the recording for this question. Remember, we're probably going to hear all of these options, but only 2 of them are correct. This means there will be 3 distractors. So be careful not to get distracted by those distractors. I'm going to play the recording. I'd like you to look at the next question below this video. Question 30, which 2 issues does Jo think are affecting her group? Choose 2. Now I'm going to play the recording.
So, Jo, is there anything else I can help you with?
Well, there was just one thing, Professor. I'm a little worried about how to keep my research group motivated. I've noticed that the 3 other students have lost their enthusiasm for the project.
I see. Do you have any idea why that might be?
I'm not sure, but I reckon it might have something to do with a lack of urgency. Even though they have lots of work from the various other subjects they study, I think there's a feeling that we have loads of time, and so there's no need to work very hard. We've got a whole 3 months before we have to submit the results of the experiment, and the other 3 see that as a chance to relax.
Right. So you're saying they need a bit of pressure if they're going to focus?
Exactly. I'm also concerned that we're not very well organized in terms of how we decide who does what. It might be a good idea to have one of us take charge of the group, because at the moment it feels like a ship without a captain.
I know what you mean.
I'm not saying it should be me, because I'm not sure the others would listen to me, but perhaps I can ask Jamila if she would be interested in taking up that role?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, well done if you got those correct. Don't worry if you didn't get all of them. The correct answers were B, the amount of time until the deadline, so that was an issue that Jo thought was affecting her group, and D, the lack of leadership, so Jo thought that was another problem for her group. Now we're going to look at the audio script and see if we can find those answers and pick out the distractors as well. Here's the audio script. Let's have a look at it and see if we can find some of those distractors and some of the answers. The first one I notice is lots of work from the various other subjects they study. This links to A, workload from other courses. But this starts with the concession even though, suggesting that the amount of work from other courses is actually not relevant. I think there's a feeling that we have loads of time and so there's no need to work very hard. We've got a whole 3 months before we have to submit the results. This links to B, the amount of time until the deadline. We have loads of time, so there's no need to work very hard. A lack of urgency. So Joe thinks there's a problem because the other students are relaxing too much because of this amount of time until the deadline. The phrases 3 months and experiment and time is also connected to C, the date of the experiment. So this is a distractor in the question, but it's not in the recording. Secondly, the student says, exactly, I'm also concerned that we're not very well organized in terms of how we decide who does what. It might be a good idea to have one of us take charge of the group. So here, the student is saying that they're not very well organized, and it would be a good idea if one of them took charge. And then this idiom of a ship without a captain. So here they're saying the lack of leadership is a problem. So the answers were B and D. That is the end of the class. Remember, if you have any questions now, you can click on that chat icon at the top of your page. Click on it to send us a message with any questions that you have. Thank you for listening.